everybody, and welcome to Unit 13, Lesson 4, the Tracks Window and Timeline. My name is Dina, and I will be showing you the way around this essential window and how to use it. This will be the window where you will be spending most of your time in editing. The timeline is the place where every sound clip, video clip, footage, and resource you have will go, and is where you will be doing all the editing, such as adding text and special effects. This is universally the most used part of any editing software. Unlike the others, this window is not able to be undocked and moved around like the preview window or the Explorer window. The timeline stays here for good. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Here in the upper left corner of your timeline window is the timestamp. If you right-click on the timestamp and go to Time Format, you can see all the different options there are for your timestamp display. The default might be time, which will show you hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, but I like to use time and frames. Time and frames will show you time down to the second, and then show you what frame you are on. For more on frames, check out Unit 14, Lesson 1. The timestamp shows you what time your timeline cursor is currently at. So if you are playing a video, the timestamp, of course, moves along with that. For example here, if it shows 15 seconds, like this, that means it is exactly 15 seconds from the beginning of the video. To play video in your timeline, you can use your timeline cursor, which is this thin line that appears wherever you click on your timeline. You can move that wherever you want, then press play to preview any edits you have made. Now, let's go over the basics of the timeline. When opening a new project, Vegas will display nothing on the timeline, meaning there are no tracks yet. Once you add a raw video clip into the timeline, Vegas will then automatically create the correct tracks for you. Placing a clip onto the timeline is as simple as dragging and dropping your desired footage from the Project Media folder within the Explorer window, or from a file explorer on your computer. How to actually use this window for editing will be explained in further detail in Unit 14, Lesson 2. Here, let's keep looking at all the buttons and features. So, once you have a clip on your timeline, you'll notice that on the left of the Tracks window, Vegas has already created two tracks for you, one video and one audio. Even though Vegas has created one track each, don't let that stop you from creating more. Creating multiple tracks is very useful for layering things like B-roll, sound effects, text, or even transitions. To create more tracks, all you need to do is right-click on any empty space or an existing track and click the button labeled Insert Audio or Video. An empty space will allow you to insert either, but if you right-click on a track itself, you can only insert the same type. For a more detailed overview of tracks, track layering, and how to use them effectively, check out Unit 15, Lesson 1. Now, let's take a look at the video track. In Vegas, the tracks are colored accordingly by default, so the video track is already colored blue. This can be changed for organization purposes by right-clicking your selected track, and on the bottom of the Options menu, you will see the option Track Display Color. Here, you will have 8 colors to choose from for your organizational needs. The same can be applied to audio tracks as well. Looking over here now, we can see that there are small numbers on the very left of both the video and audio tracks. As you may have guessed, this is to let you know the number of tracks you have and help you know which number track you have selected or are working on. The video track number label has a little film icon below it, whereas the audio track has a little microphone icon. If you'll notice here, the video track and audio track have some different buttons and functions, as well as some identical ones. Immediately, we can see that there is a big slider on the video track labeled level, as well as a numerical value of 100%. This slider controls the opacity of the entire track itself. There is more on opacity in Unit 14, Lesson 4. This slider is more useful when we are dealing with more than one video track, so for now, let's go ahead and move on to the audio track. On the audio track, we can see that there are two sliders this time, both of which control just the sound. On the left, you can see that there is a bigger slider. This is the gain slider. Gain will affect the volume input when it comes to editing video and music. Similar to the master bus, this slider also controls the volume. But in this case, using the slider on one audio track controls the volume for just that particular track. Here's an interesting thing I'd like to point out. Notice how on the gain slider, unlike the video track's opacity slider, which is turned all the way up to 100%, it actually starts at 0 dB, which is just a little to the right from the center. When you move the slider button to the left, it goes into negative decibels. In this case, the lower the number, the quieter it will be. On the other hand, as we drag the slider button over to the right, the number will increase and your track will become louder. This is useful for sound recordings that didn't turn out the way you want and you want to normalize them. Like the video track, any changes you make to a specific track will only apply to things on that track alone without affecting the other ones. Next, you'll notice the other slider, with the slider arrow set in the center of the line. This is for the direction that you want your audio to be set in. If you slide the button a little to the right and play it back, your audio will sound like it's coming from the right side, but still play faintly on the left. However, if you move the slider all the way to the end, it will only play on the right side. The exact same can be applied if you slide the direction to the left. This is fairly useful, and I'll be talking more about why directional audio is important in Unit 17, where we discuss audio in its entirety. Other technical terms for adjusting your audio levels like gain, normalizing, and so forth will also be discussed there. Next, let's look at the other buttons. On the upper right-hand corner of the tracks, there are two buttons. The button on the left is a red circle with an M on it. This serves to mute the entire track and only that track, leaving all other tracks unaffected. The word mute is often associated with sound, right? Mute the TV, mute the laptop, mute the phone. But in this case, the mute button applies to both audio and video tracks. For the audio track, it cuts off all sound, muting it like we're familiar with doing. However, if you press mute on a video track, it will completely stop all video on that track from showing up in preview or in the final rendered video. In other words, the mute button is essentially like erasing the track completely while not actually deleting any of your hard work. The next button you see beside the mute button is a yellow brownish button with an S and an exclamation point on it. This one is the solo switch. It isolates that one track and mutes all other tracks. So, the only thing previewing will be the particular track that you soloed. One useful application for the solo button is for separating out audio tracks when you have lots of them, such as music, sound effects, voiceover, and dialogue. Also, here on the very right of the audio track, you'll notice that you have a mini version of a levels monitor, just like the master bus window we discussed in Unit 13 Lesson 2. This shows you the audio volume for that specific track only, and works exactly like the master bus levels monitor. The louder it gets, the higher the bar will move, and the color will change from green to orange to red as well. Now, let's look over here to the bottom of the timeline. This is your basic toolbar that contains all the relevant tools that you will use when editing. The first one that looks like a microphone is a general record button. This is exclusively for sound recordings. It will automatically select your default microphone and record with that. The next button is the loop playback button. This is when your selected region will loop continuously. To select a region, you simply drag your cursor from your desired starting point and let go to where you want it to stop. This is how you designate a selected region for playback. Next up, we have our play, pause, and stop buttons. Even though the play, pause button is usually the spacebar by default, Vegas's system is a little different. In this case, play is the spacebar, and the timeline cursor will move along with the preview. However, if you press the spacebar one more time, it works as the stop button, which returns your timeline cursor back to its starting position. If you wish to pause at a certain point, directly where the timeline cursor is, instead of hitting the spacebar to stop, you should click the pause button, which in this case is enter. The next two work in pairs, as one button is to move your timeline cursor to the very beginning of your timeline, and the other to the very end of your current project clip. The same can be said for the next two, which are next and previous frames. Clicking these buttons will move your timeline cursor one frame forward or backward, respectively. For more on frames, check out Unit 14, Lesson 1. Next, let's skip over to perhaps the most important button on this toolbar, the split button. This button allows you to split any clip, no matter audio or video, wherever you have your timeline cursor placed. The next useful tool is the Insert Marker tool. This is to insert an orange marker that looks quite similar to the timeline cursor, except it marks a specific point on your timeline. You can also rename and label them to whatever you want. The marker will stay in place if you don't move it, but if you want to, you can drag it wherever. Next up is the Insert Region button. This basically creates a selected region, which will appear as two green markers. The regions are also renameable, so you can keep track of which region is what. We'll talk more about regions later in Unit 14, Lesson 4, so don't worry if this all sounds too complicated so far. And that's it for our timeline window. The timeline window houses arguably the most important part of editing, the video and audio tracks. You will use this window so much that all the tools and keyboard shortcuts will feel like muscle memory. We'll be talking more about common tools and shortcuts next, so I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye!